Hello. Today we're going to go through a quick tutorial stroke demonstration of working with sprites and a UI, a simple UI, particularly focusing on adding widgets to that UI and applying a image. So it's a particular process which isn't necessarily clear. It's not as straightforward as it could be within the Unreal editor, but once you've actually put all the pieces together, isn't that difficult. So this project is one that I've already set up, and we can therefore see what we're going to try and produce. So if we click play, we can see that we've got a widget with some text, and immediately under that we, after a few seconds, display 3 additional widgets or 3 additional images, and they're all different. If we run it again, we can see that the icons that show up are different. So they're randomly picking either a bronze, silver or gold star and displaying it under the word. So we'll go through trying to create that from a blank project. So we've got a blank project, a blank blueprint project with 3D or 2D scalable graphics and no starter content. So for this demonstration, the first thing we're going to do is just get rid of all the starter content, because no starter content doesn't actually mean no starter content. And we are going to create a structure for our data. And we're just going to call it a star. Now we're creating this structure so that we can apply the sprite that we need to the type of star that it is. So it's a very basic structure, just purely for that kind of star name, be it gold, silver or bronze, to sprite, the gold, silver or bronze sprite. And this isn't what you would have to do to get stars to show up on the screen in terms in a widget. This is just kind of mainly for the demonstration purposes. This is how we're constructing it. So we've got our star structure, and then we need a data table, and always forget where the data table is. Miscellaneous, there we go. And we use our star structure, and this will be simply called the stars. Now we need to import our images that we're going to use. So we'll quickly grab them. So we have 3 images that we're going to import into our graphics folder. Oh, there we go. A bronze star, a gold star and a silver star. Move them into our graphics folder. So they have been imported as textures, and from those textures we want to create a sprite, because the sprite is what we're going to use throughout this project. Again, this is for demonstration purposes, mainly about getting sprites on widgets that are dynamically created, not necessarily for showing stars, kind of say for how well someone's done on at the end of the level. While it works, and that's kind of the theme of this demonstration, it's not required to do it this way if that's what you wanted. So now within our data table, we will define our 3 stars, and the data table has 2 columns because of the way our structure is. Our structure has the sprite, which we will change to a paper sprite. Has 2 columns. The first column is the kind of the name column, as it calls it, effectively the index, if you were thinking of it from a database type perspective. But every row you create, you provide it a name. In this case, we're going to call it gold, and therefore we're going to pick the gold sprite, and we'll add 2 more. This one will be silver, using the silver sprite, and the final one, bronze, and the bronze sprite. So our data table is just holding that pair between a name, gold, and our sprite, the gold sprite, gold star sprite. And then we're going to create our primary widget, and this will be our star container. Without the space. And we're going to keep this very simple for the purpose of this demonstration. We're going to add in a couple of containers just to get it nice and centered. A vertical box, and well, just actually that's the only container we want. And we're going to have some text, and then we're going to have a horizontal box where we're going to put the stars. The text, we're going to change that simply to say stars, like we had in the demonstration. And we will make the font size of that a little bigger, maybe 48. And now we will do some positioning. So currently our vertical box, if we zoom in here, our vertical box is quite tight up against the side, so we just want to anchor that to the middle and full width like that. And our stars text and horizontal box will go there. So once you've specified the anchor, the positional information here changes according to what you've got. And because it's up in the right hand corner, the position Y is very high, the offset right is very high, and the size is just pretty much as it was anyway. But we can, if we zero these numbers, we then get it so that we can see it full size. And we do need to make it a little bit taller, so we'll just drag it so that it covers the word. And then we select the text box and we just center that. We select the horizontal box and we center that too. And we specify, I think we could have actually said size to content for the vertical box, and we don't need to do that for the horizontal box. Okay, so that's kind of it set up, this particular widget. In that widget, we are going to want to display our stars. And we want to display our stars under the word in our horizontal box. So we want to make the horizontal box a variable so we can access it within the graph, and we want to give it a meaningful name, and we'll just call that the actual star container. So if we go into our graph, we're now able to access the star container from within here, and that's where we can add our stars. So to be able to add a widget to the screen, we'll start with that. We need to edit the level blueprint and create a widget. And we want to create the star container widget that we've created, and then we want to add to viewport so it becomes visible. We compile and save that. It'll ask us what the name of the level is. In this case, we'll just simply call it default. Save that one too, and minimize and play. So we should see our stars. That's our widget. There's no stars currently, but the widget is there and visible. And edit the blueprint again. Within our stars container, we want to create new widgets, basically images, to add to our star container. Now, there's no way to simply create an image component like we would do if we just dragged that in here and put an image onto it. So if we were pre-positioning these sprites, or we always wanted to show gold stars or something very straightforward, if you just wanted to show an image within a widget, then you can drag an image in, you can specify the sprite, you can size it accordingly, and that's it, you're good to go. But we don't want to show specific sprites. We want to show realistically when they do well, a gold one, if they do okay, a silver one, and if they've just done passable, a bronze one, that kind of system. So we need a way of dynamically creating those stars instead of predefining them. Within our star container, we can call create widget, but the only widgets we have a choice of are the ones that we've defined. There is no way, as I've said, to create an image. In fact, there's probably very little to do with images in terms of the context help we get here. Even if we turn off the context sensitive, we get a few more options, but we don't get anything that allows us to create an image as we would in the designer view. But that's easy to overcome. What we do is we create a new widget blueprint, and in that widget blueprint we call it simply an image, and in that we take an image and we replace the canvas panel. Maybe delete it first and put it in, either way around, and we'll give it a useful name, default image. By naming it, it defines it as a variable. The size, positioning, all doesn't matter, it'll be sized accordingly when we use it. So that's the image widget sorted. Now within our container graph we can create that widget. But we can't define, we can get the default, I think. Probably haven't exposed it actually. That one. Yes, so we can't edit this image by default from outside of this blueprint, and we would inevitably want to be able to set the sprite to it. So simple way of dealing with that, and to make it more obvious what the purpose of this particular widget is to create a new function called set sprite. And that function will take three things. Firstly, it will take the sprite. Secondly, it will take the width and the height. The sprite will be a pass by reference, and it will be a paper sprite. The width, an integer in both of those, and we'll just default it to be 32 pixels by 32 pixels. The default would obviously depend on the situation and what's typically going to be in there, or perhaps if you were using this widget for a lot of different things, it wouldn't have a default. But nonetheless, our paper sprite input and our width and our height. Now, for an image, this is the context of this should be the widget as a whole. We want to get the default image, and from that we can't set the sprite, which seems a bit weird. That's what I would have expected. That's what I did expect. You set the image here. Oh, so it says image there, not sprite. Okay, so let's look for that instead. Set image. No, that's again not the one we want. So you can't set the image of an image directly. You can't set it to a sprite. There's very little. Okay, there's no references to sprite within the image context at all. So you have to kind of do it a slightly different way, but it's still only just one call. From the sprite, we call make brush from sprite. We give it the width and the height that we pass in, and the return value is a slate brush. And we can, on the image, set the brush and pass that in there. That is all we need to set the sprite of this widget. Effectively, the widget's image component, but visually it's just going to be that widget. Now, from within our star container, we can create an image, which is already selected. And from that, we can call the set sprite function. What is there? Nope. Redo that one. Yep. Great widget. Didn't seem to come up before. Maybe it was because I'd already clicked on it and it didn't know what it was. And set image. Oh, set sprite. Doesn't seem to like it context sensitive, but it's there. There we go, that's what we were looking for. We'll leave the width and the height as they were, and we've created the widget, we've set the sprite, and now we need to add child to horizontal box, and the horizontal box is our star container that we've created earlier. These lined up. So in this case, we on the pre-construct, and that way we can see it within the editor. We create a new widget, we set the sprite, which we have yet to define, and we add it to the vertical box. So that's not going to show up anything in the designer. It's not going to show up anything when we press play, because we have a blueprint error and we haven't defined our sprite. Now, the reason we created the data table is because that's a good way of having some name against some sprite. As I say, there's probably plenty of other ways to do it. This is purely for demonstration purposes. But we're going to get a data table row. The row name is going to be gold. The data table is going to be our stars. Shuffle all that over. Not split this break. Would help. So we get the data table row, or get data table rows, get data table row for the data table stars. Simply at the moment we're just getting the gold one. The row we're breaking, and the only one property we expose is the sprite, which we can pass straight into our set sprite call. Now if we go back to the designer, we can see a gold star. We'll make that gold star a little bit bigger so that it's sized correctly according to the text. We'll play, and there we go. We can see our one star. So this is obviously hard coding it to be a particular star, and for this demonstration it'll be good to make it a little bit more dynamic. So we will go into our container and we will take the setting of the sprite, the creation of the image and the widget, and adding it to the container and create that as a function. Now we don't want, actually we want all of that, and we will collapse that to a function. And now we just have a single function, and the only thing we're missing from that to make this work, and we'll call this add star. The only thing we're missing now is input. What we want to import is the row name that we're using for the star. So we'll have an import, and we'll call that type because it's the type of the star and it's a name property. And we'll just connect those two up. Everything else about the creation of the widget, the setting of the sprite, and the adding it to the container remains the same. So we can go back to our primary level and we can change the name to be gold. But actually we'll do silver now so we can see the difference, make sure it's all worked. Compile that, jump to the designer, and we can see everything has remained the same except we've got a silver star instead. And now what we can do is we can get rid of the call from the pre-construct of this particular class, and jump back into our level blueprint just for a clean place to put this. In this code we're creating our star container, we're adding it to the viewport. Once we've done that, we want to do a sequence because we want to add 3 stars, and for each of those stars we'll use a delay just so that the stars don't all appear at the same time. So I'll have 3 separate delays. If you only used one delay and you joined it up from each of the different sequences, you would only end up with one completed event occurring. So we'll get the data table row names. That returns an array of all the names from a given data table, in our case stars, and we'll do that for all 3 of these. We'll separate these by a second, so it's 1, 2, 3 seconds duration, so they happen one after each other. And then from the array of names we'll get one, a reference of one for all it matters. Doesn't really matter if it's a reference or a copy when you're just talking about a name in this context, but reference tends to be slightly nicer. And we'll do it from a random integer. Oh, not that one. Random integer in range. Actually, I think it would have been the same, wouldn't it? 0 max minus 1, yeah, so that's better. So do random integer, and the maximum value would be 2 because we've got 0, 1 and 2, and this array will have 3 items starting at 0. From that we want to call the add star method of our star widget here. So we drag that, call add star, and we'll move this all the way over here. And we can create little points here just to, so just double clicking onto the line to make another connection point, and then arranging it so it goes round all the other parts. Join that one up and that one up. So now what we're doing here is creating our star widget container, adding that to the viewport, which in actual fact we probably could do that last. So some rearranging to do. And then we'll add to viewport. We can take it from here and join it to there, so we keep it clean. So we create our widget 3 times. We call delay with 3 different delays, and for each of those we get effectively a random name from our data table, and we pass it into the add star method. The add star method on our star container takes that name, gets the appropriate row from the data table, and therefore the sprite from that, creates a new widget with it. Again, we could actually do a slightly different order, where we get the data table row first, and then we create the image. Break that one. Just in case an incorrect name has been provided. There's no purpose creating a widget unless we know we're going to actually use it. So we're given a name, we get the appropriate data table row, create a widget, which is our image widget. We set the sprite from the data table rows information, and then we add it to the horizontal box. If we compile and save all of the views and go back to the main window and click play, our 3 stars appear. We run it again and we get 3 different stars. Now I'm not quite sure something must be slightly in the wrong order, because our primary widget, yes, I think what we did wrong was we do add to the viewport last, but unfortunately that's after all of the delays, so we probably don't want to do it that way round. It would probably make more sense to do it that way round, but because effectively these delays aren't going to occur until after their appropriate seconds, really there's no point doing that so late anymore. We'll revert it back to what we had before. And we'll add that widget to the screen straight away. Because there's no doing it after the delay. The reason to put it at the end was that then it would only ever show up when it was complete, but because of these, it's not going to be complete until after the second, whether we add it first or last. We'll get a slightly better result now, where the word is straight away and the stars are randomly added, and every time we run it we'll get some different stars. And that's it. So as I say, the primary focus, the primary demonstration was about dynamically adding images to a container, in this case our star container, our horizontal box, how to add images there with a dynamic sprite, and the little bits and pieces we had to do, the key one being creation of our, go back to the content browser, creation of our image widget with the make brush from Sprite call. Okay, hopefully that will be useful to somebody. I'm currently working on a project creating a Megalomania clone in Unreal Engine. So it's pretty much my first Unreal Engine game. So I'm kind of learning as I go. I stream the process most days of the week, approximately 9 p.m. GMT time, or BST time as it currently is, for the next month. I hope you stop by and take a look, or catch up on the videos on YouTube. The link to my stream Twitch is available in the About Me box for my YouTube channel. So thanks for watching. Hopefully it's been useful, and look out for some more tutorials moving forwards. Bye for now.